Uh, I'll be talking about fused deposition molding 3D printing method, or in other words called FDM printers, and what they do. Fused deposition molding (FDM) is 3D printing technology that is widely used for creating 3D dimensional objects layer by layer. It was developed by Scott Crump in the late 1980s and is a trademark term owned by Strat. I can't pronounce that. Leading manufacturer of 3D printers. It's widely recognized. I think it's one of the most popular ways to use 3D printers using this particular method. And based on price, how much printers cost and how easy it is to operate printers. But overall, again, it depends what kind of problem you're looking to solve. To most extent, to some extent, 3D printers in terms of output, how much you can produce in particular time frame. There might be small scale operations might be most suitable process. Then if you're progressing into millions, perhaps there's the different manufacturing methods that might be a lot of companies might be interested in looking at, where 3D printers and FDM in this particular video that we're going to be discussing, it's small scale output. So perhaps prototyping. Prototyping means perhaps 1 unit, 2 units, 5 units, 100 units, 1000 units. Perhaps that's the best suitable way to do it. But if you have large production orders, we're talking about millions and millions of units, then there are definitely better manufacturing methods out there. We can cover those a little bit later, but in this particular video, let's take a look at FDM printers and what they do. Material filament. FDM printers use thermoplastics filaments as a raw material. Common materials include ABS, Acrylonitrile Butadiene Styrene. I have a lot of experience working with IBS overall material. I do understand it very well. Not only IBS, I do have a lot of experience, personal experience over the years, working with different type of materials and some of the use cases. Myself, where I could find ABS on a day-to-day basis, commonly, yeah, I believe most of the people, if they have washing machines, dryers, they have ABS materials there. I'm talking about plastics, different types of plastics. There are a lot of materials there as ABS, as well as propylene, or in industry we call them polyprop. It's just to name some of the materials that I have a lot of experience working myself. But either way, so next material would be PLA, polylactic acid. PLA, some materials work better depending on the use cases. PLA is made from cornstarch, so potentially PLA can melt in the water. So it depends what you're trying to achieve and what kind of material you need. But PLA is a cheap material. It's one of the cheapest in the industry that you can find. So perhaps depending on what you like to do with PLA, or if once it's been printed, what would be use cases for if you like to print a boat and put in your bathtub, perhaps PLA might not be the best material, right? But if you perhaps like to have, I don't know, like a game figure or a chest or anything like that, perhaps PLA based on price and how much you will pay for might be a best material that you can have, as well as PETG. I'm not entirely sure. I think PET is something that most of the water bottles made from. Uh, Polyethylene Glycol and many others. I don't know that much about other materials. I have covered some of the materials. I do understand all the properties and use cases, how hard they are, how easy it is to recycle some of the materials. PLA not necessarily best for recycling because of its properties. It would need to grind into small pieces and later heated to the same temperatures, and all the other every material is different based on its properties and use cases. So it's some of the ones that I have myself seeing working in the future would be polyprop. I do understand this material very well, and I believe it's one of the best to use and recycle and use again based on durability, price, and many other factors. Extrusion. The filament in the fed into extrusion nozzle, which is typically heated to melt the material. The temperature varies depending on the type of filament being used. Layer by layer depositor. The melted material is deposited onto a built platform layer by layer, starting from the bottom of the moving upwards. The nozzle moves into X and Y axis to create desirable shape, while the built platform moves down, or in some cases the nozzle moves up to accommodate each new layer. Cooling and solidification. As each layer is deposited, it quickly cools and solidifies. This process continues until the entire object is built up, layer by layer. Support structure. In case where overhangs or complex geometricals are involved, support structures made of the same material or different materials are often added. These supports can be removed after printing is completed. Post-processing. Once the 3D printing process is filled, the printed object may be required some post-processing steps such as removing supports, sanding, painting, or assembly depending on the specific applications. Just to summarize, depending on what you would like to print, there's so many free software or paid software depending on what you're gonna do once the material is printed. There are a lot of options up there for people who are interested. You can do your own research to just cover some of the areas that if you could cover from best printer based on what you would like to print to best material, not necessarily just based on the price, perhaps different properties of the material or based on what you're going to be using that material for. You might, if you're just planning or venturing into 3D printing, perhaps entry level works best for you. FDM, I believe, is one of the cheapest models. PLM, the PLA, it's one of the cheapest materials. So, but that's not necessary. Once you get to feel what material and complexities of some materials and what will be required of you working with those materials, as well as upside, downside, perhaps of some of the printers and options, what it could be used for, and how detailed those printers might be. If you there's a bed on which you are printing, if you bend that bed, for example, that would make your all Y and X axis off, and all your work might be affected. So it just some perhaps entry level is something if you especially if you are younger, perhaps that would be the best place to begin. I would highly recommend to everyone to try it. So then you could gain a little bit or an extra understanding what it would be required for you to work on some of the complex projects, and from there you can understand what would look as prototyping, progressing from prototyping to large scale manufacturing, and you could have some feel for materials and what you can do with those materials. And I believe it's a good tool as a learning tool. Begin with entry level, learn it, try it, test it, see what works, what doesn't work, and what are limitations with some of those models currently up there, and perhaps improve those. For those of you who would like to learn more, I would highly recommend to purchase the book. The name of the book is Game Strategy. I'm sharing a lot of information in the book for those of you who are interested in today's topic. I'm sharing a lot of information about the future, especially with regards to 3D printing, and where industry is right now, and where even not necessarily just 3D printing, but I'm overall covering a lot of topics, including 3D printing and overall manufacturing, and what potentially industry can look like in the future, especially for new or next generations of leaders and what they would need to know, venturing into different business ventures, including perhaps offering digital products or services as well as tangible products, and what you yourself would need to know about 3D printing. You can find this book in the description below, as well as Top Retailers has it. FDM is known for its affordability, easy to use, and versatility. It's commonly used in various industries for rapid prototyping, custom part production, and even in educational settings. I would highly recommend if I want to try it. It depends on your budget, if you have any extra capital, I guess, and how you can potentially generate money from small projects, I guess, if that's something that you are interested in. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next one.